Lena slumped onto her couch, rubbing her temples as she stared at the stack of unpaid bills on the coffee table. Rent was due in 3 days. The fridge was nearly empty. Her son, Adam, had outgrown his shoes again, and she didn't even have enough left over for a cheap replacement. She let out a slow breath, forcing back the lump in her throat. She was used to struggling. It had been her reality since Adam's father walked out before he was even born. But tonight, it felt heavier, like the weight of the world was pressing down on her chest. Then came the text. "Join me for a drink. No pressure, just talk." Her heart skipped. It was from Khalid. She met him once, just once, when she was serving at an upscale lounge, balancing trays of overpriced cocktails while rich men laughed at things that weren't funny. But Khalid, he was different. He noticed her, watched her, tipped her more than she made in a whole shift. And when he spoke, it wasn't with arrogance. It was like he already knew her story. Now here he was, offering a drink. A casual invite from a man who could buy the entire city if he wanted to. She hesitated, but then she looked at Adam's tiny sneakers by the door, soles worn so thin they barely had any grip left. Before she could overthink it, her fingers moved. "Where?" The response was instant. "Penthouse bar, no expectations. But if you come, I promise you won't regret it." Lena exhaled sharply. She already knew. Tonight, everything was about to change. Lena stood outside the towering glass hotel, staring at her reflection in the doors. She had borrowed a dress from her coworker, something a little tighter, a little shorter than she was used to. It wasn't like she was meeting him for that, was she? Just a drink, just a conversation. That's what she told herself. The doorman greeted her with a nod, and before she could hesitate, she stepped inside. The elevator ride to the penthouse bar felt like forever. With each floor that passed, her stomach tightened. Maybe she shouldn't have come. Maybe this was a mistake. But when the doors slid open, and she saw Khalid leaning casually against the bar, a glass of something dark in his hand, those thoughts scattered. He was even more dangerously attractive than she remembered. Dressed in a crisp black suit, his watch catching the dim lighting, he looked like someone who had never been told no in his entire life. And the way his eyes flicked over her, like he had already undressed her in his mind. "Wasn't sure you'd come," he said, smirking as he took a slow sip. Lena swallowed. "I wasn't sure either." He gestured for her to sit, and the bartender appeared instantly, pouring her a drink without even asking what she wanted. "So tell me, Lena." Khalid leaned in slightly, his voice smooth, deliberate. "What would you do if money were no object? If, for one night, you didn't have to worry about rent, bills, your son's school fees?" Her fingers tightened around the glass. "I don't play what-if games. That's not real life." "But what if it could be?" His gaze didn't waver. "What if, just for tonight, reality bent in your favor?" There it was, the shift. Her pulse quickened. She should have seen it coming. He didn't ask her here just for a drink. This was something else. "You're offering me money?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. He didn't flinch. "I'm offering you a way out, for one night. No strings, no consequences. Just pleasure." Lena let out a soft, breathless laugh. "And how much is pleasure worth to you?" Khalid set down his glass and leaned in just enough that she could smell the hint of his cologne. Dark, expensive, intoxicating. "Enough to change your life." Her throat went dry. She should be offended. She should walk away. But she didn't. Because the truth was, for the first time in a long time, she was tired of saying no to everything. Tired of struggling. Tired of pretending she didn't sometimes dream of something, someone, who could take the weight off her shoulders, even if just for a night. "So?" he murmured, watching her with a quiet intensity. "What's your answer, Lena?" She exhaled, staring at the man in front of her, the devil in a tailored suit. And against all logic, she found herself whispering, "How much?" Lena didn't know what she expected him to say. Maybe a hesitant pause, a smirk, some playful back and forth. But Khalid didn't hesitate, not even for a second. $100,000. Her breath caught in her throat. He said it like it was nothing, like he was ordering another drink or making an offhand comment about the weather. She blinked. You're joking. Khalid leaned back, fingers tapping against his glass. Do I look like the kind of man who jokes? Number he didn't. Her mind spun. $100,000. That wasn't just rent money. That was a new life. That was security. That was Adam never having to hear the word no again when he needed something. But it was also something else. Her stomach tightened. She knew what people would say, what she would have said if she were on the outside looking in. But it was easy to have morals when you weren't drowning. She took a slow sip of her drink, hoping it would calm the storm inside her. What exactly do you want for that money? Khalid's gaze flickered with something dark. One night. Just you. No limits. No limits. The words sent a shiver down her spine. But whether it was fear or something else, she wasn't sure. Why me? She asked. You could have anyone. Women probably throw themselves at you every day. His lips twitched like he appreciated her bluntness. They do, but I don't want them. I want you. A simple answer, but it made her chest tighten. She exhaled. And when the night is over, you walk away. No strings, no expectations. He swirled his drink lazily. Unless you don't want to. A challenge. An open door. Lena looked at him, really looked at him. This man was dangerous, but not in the way she'd always been warned about. He wasn't reckless. He wasn't unpredictable. He was the opposite. Calculated, controlled, a man who always knew exactly what he wanted. And tonight, for some reason, he wanted her. Her fingers tightened around her glass. She could say no. She could finish this drink, thank him for his time, and go back to her tiny apartment, where the heating barely worked and the fridge was more empty than full. Or she could say yes. She could wake up in silk sheets instead of a lumpy mattress. She could have one night where she wasn't just a struggling single mom, but a woman who was desired, spoiled, worshipped. And after that, she would have $100,000. Lena swallowed hard. Okay. Something flickered in Khalid's expression. Satisfaction, maybe, or maybe something deeper. But he didn't gloat. He just nodded, like he'd known all along that this was how it would end. Finish your drink, he said, standing up and adjusting the cuff of his sleeve. Then let's go. She stared at the amber liquid in her glass, then threw it back in one smooth motion. Tonight, her life was going to change. The ride to Khalid's penthouse was quiet, not uncomfortable, but thick with something unspoken. Lena kept her hands in her lap, her fingers twisting together. She could feel the weight of his gaze on her, but he didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The car pulled into a private entrance, and before she could even move, a valet opened her door. Khalid stepped out first, then held out his hand. A gentlemanly gesture, a contradiction to everything this night was supposed to be. Lena hesitated before slipping her fingers into his. His grip was warm. Firm. The moment they stepped inside, the world shifted. The penthouse was insane. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glittering city skyline, a view so unreal it made her stomach flip. Everything was sleek, modern, drenched in soft, ambient lighting. A fireplace crackled in the distance, the only sound breaking the silence. Lena swallowed. This wasn't just a home. This was power. Khalid watched her reaction with quiet amusement. Do you like it? It's unreal, she admitted. You'll get used to it. He poured himself a drink. Are you nervous? Lena forced a smirk. I'm fine. Liar. She stiffened. He set his glass down and walked toward her, slow and deliberate. When he reached her, he didn't touch her. Not yet. He just stood close enough for her to feel the heat of his body. You don't have to pretend with me, Lena, he murmured. Not tonight. Something in her cracked. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the weight of pretending to be strong all the time. Maybe it was just him. Either way, she exhaled shakily. I don't know how to do this. Khalid's fingers brushed her jaw, tilting her face up to his. Then let me show you. And just like that, she stopped thinking. She let go. And for the first time in a long time, she let herself feel. Lena woke to the soft glow of the sunrise filtering through the massive windows. For a brief moment, she forgot where she was. Then the memories hit her all at once. The way Khalid had stripped her of more than just her clothes. The way he had touched her, not just with hunger, but with something else. Something deeper. The way he had whispered things that made her feel like she was the only woman in the world. She turned her head slowly. He was still there. Lying beside her, his arm draped lazily over the pillow, dark lashes resting against his sharp cheekbones. Peaceful, unaffected, like this was just another night for him. And maybe it was. But for her, she exhaled, carefully slipping out from under the sheets. The cold air hit her skin, but it was nothing compared to the chill creeping into her chest. She needed to leave. She had told herself there would be no emotions, no attachment. This was a transaction, $100,000, nothing more. And yet, as she quietly gathered her clothes, something in her ached. She had made her choice. So why did it feel like she was leaving a part of herself behind? As she reached the door, she paused. One last look, one last moment. Then before she could change her mind, she stepped out. And just like that, it was over. Or so she thought. Before we continue, what would you do? Would you take the money and run? Or stay knowing this was more than just a transaction? Hit that subscribe button because trust me, this story is far from over. Lena walked through the hotel's private corridor, her heels clicking against the marble floors, each step feeling heavier than the last. The elevator doors slid open and she stepped inside, pressing the button for the lobby with a shaky breath. She should feel relieved. She had done what she came for. The money would be in her account soon, and all of her problems, at least the ones that could be solved with cash, would disappear. So why did her chest feel so tight? The doors slid shut, and then, leaving without saying goodbye? Lena froze. That voice, deep, smooth, laced with something unreadable. She turned slowly. Khalid stood there, leaning casually against the doorway, like he had all the time in the world. He wasn't fully dressed, just dark lounge pants, his shirt unbuttoned enough to reveal the hard planes of his chest. He looked dangerous, like a man who got what he wanted. And right now he wanted an answer. Lena forced a small, tense smile. We said everything we needed to last night. Khalid studied her. Then to her surprise, he smirked. Did we? Her pulse spiked. Why wasn't he letting this be easy? She had done exactly what he proposed. No strings, no complications. So why did he look at her like she was walking away with something that belonged to him? The elevator door started to close, but he stepped forward, stopping it with one hand. Come have breakfast, he said. Lena hesitated. I should go. You could go. His eyes gleamed with something unreadable. But you won't. A challenge? A dare. And damn it, he was right. Her feet didn't move. Because deep down she knew. This wasn't over. Not yet. Lena should have walked away. She knew that. But instead she found herself back in Khalid's penthouse, sitting across from him at a sleek marble dining table, an untouched plate of food in front of her. This was a mistake. She had already gotten what she came for. She should be on her way home, back to the real world, back to Adam. But something about the way Khalid looked at her, calm, unreadable, like he wasn't finished with her yet, made it impossible to leave. You're not eating, he observed, leaning back in his chair. Lena picked up her fork just to have something to do. Not hungry. Liar. Her grip tightened. Stop calling me that. Then stop lying. His voice was smooth, casual, but there was an edge underneath, like he saw right through her. Lena exhaled sharply, setting the fork down. Why did you ask me to stay? Khalid didn't answer immediately. He took a sip of his coffee, watching her like she was some kind of puzzle he hadn't quite figured out yet. Finally, he said, because you left like you were running from something. Her breath caught. She was running. From what, she wasn't sure. Maybe from him. Maybe from the way he had made her feel last night. Seen, wanted, safe. And that was the real danger, wasn't it? Because it was never supposed to feel like that. This was a business arrangement, she said carefully. You don't need to check on me. His lips twitched. And yet, here you are. Damn him. Lena pushed her chair back. I should go. Khalid didn't stop her. He just watched as she stood, as if waiting for something. She hesitated and then, what if I told you the money was just the beginning? Lena froze. Slowly, she turned back to face him. What does that mean? Khalid leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table, his gaze sharp. It means I don't think I'm done with you yet. Her pulse spiked. That wasn't part of the deal. I know. His smirk was slow, deliberate. So let's make a new one. Lena swallowed hard. She had told herself this was a one-time thing, a night she could lock away in her memories, untouched, unspoken. But now Khalid was offering her something else, something dangerous, something tempting. And the scariest part? She wasn't sure she wanted to say no. Should Lena take his offer, or is she in too deep already? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for the next part. You won't believe what happens next. Bambupuge. Lena knew she should say no. She wanted to say no, but she didn't, because deep down, some reckless, dangerous part of her wanted to know what it felt like to be wanted by a man like Khalid. Not just for one night, not just as a passing fantasy, but for something more. And so against every ounce of logic, she sat back down. I'm listening, she said. A slow smirk spread across Khalid's face. He had won, and he knew it. But Lena also knew she had power now, too. She had something he wanted, and that was a dangerous thing. I want you to stay, he said simply. Lena raised an eyebrow. For how long? He shrugged, swirling the coffee in his cup like they were negotiating a business deal. Not whatever this was. A month, maybe more. No expectations, no commitments. Just you and me. No limits. A month. Lena's heart pounded. That wasn't just a fling. That was enough time for something real to take root. Enough time for her to start feeling things she had no business feeling. And what do I get in return? She asked, keeping her voice steady. Khalid leaned in, his dark eyes gleaming. Anything you want. Silence stretched between them, heavy and charged. Lena inhaled deeply. I need time to think. For the first time, she saw something flicker in Khalid's expression, something almost uncertain. He wasn't used to waiting. He wasn't used to women hesitating. But Lena wasn't just any woman. Take your time, he said, his voice smooth, controlled. But don't take too long. That night, Lena lay awake in her tiny apartment, staring at the ceiling. She had the money now, enough to pay her rent for months, enough to buy Adam everything he needed, enough to stop surviving and start living. She didn't need Khalid anymore. So why couldn't she stop thinking about him? She rolled onto her side, her phone glowing softly on the nightstand. One unread message. Khalid. Still thinking? Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She should tell him no. She should end this before she lost herself in something she couldn't control. But instead, she typed 3 simple words. Let's talk tomorrow. And with that, she sealed her fate. The next evening, Khalid was waiting for her at a private rooftop lounge, the city stretching endlessly behind him. He looked like sin in a tailored suit, his gaze burning into her the second she arrived. You came, he said, pleased. Lena slid into the seat across from him. Tell me the real reason you want me to stay. Khalid studied her, then exhaled slowly, setting down his drink. Because you're different. She let out a short, breathless laugh. Different how? He smirked. You're not impressed by the money, the power. You see me, not the empire. For the first time, Lena saw a flicker of something raw in his expression. Beneath the arrogance, beneath the control, there was a man who wasn't used to being seen at all. And that terrified her more than anything, because that meant she was already in too deep. And what happens after a month? She asked. Khalid's smirk faded. He didn't answer right away. Then quietly he said, I don't know. That was the most honest thing he'd said to her yet. Lena exhaled. Okay. Khalid's brow lifted. Okay? She met his gaze. 1 month. No promises. No expectations. His smirk returned. Good choice. But something told her this wasn't a choice at all. This was the beginning of something that could either save her or destroy her. For weeks, everything was perfect. Khalid spoiled her in ways she never imagined. Private dinners in places she couldn't even pronounce. Weekend getaways to cities she had only seen in magazines. He never treated her like she was something he had bought. He treated her like she was his. And that was the problem. Because every time he touched her, every time he looked at her like she was the only woman in the world, Lena felt herself slipping, forgetting that this had an expiration date, forgetting that he wasn't hers to keep. But then everything changed. One night she woke to an empty bed. Frowning, she wrapped herself in the silk robe he had bought her and padded barefoot into the dimly lit penthouse. Khalid stood by the window, a phone pressed to his ear. No, I told you. Handle it. I don't have time for this. His voice was sharp, controlled, but there was an edge she had never heard before. I'll be back soon. Lena froze. Back? The call ended. Where are you going? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Khalid turned, and for the first time she saw something she wasn't supposed to see. Regret. It's business. Her stomach twisted. You're leaving? Khalid exhaled, running a hand through his hair. I told you, Lena. No promises. Her chest ached. She had been so stupid, so naive. She had told herself this was just a deal, just a temporary escape. But somewhere along the way, it had become more. So that's it, she whispered. I'm just supposed to wake up one day, and you're gone? Khalid's jaw tightened. This was never forever. A sharp pain twisted in her chest. She had known that. She knew that. But hearing it out loud, that shattered her. She nodded slowly, stepping back. Then go. Khalid hesitated. Lena, just go. And so, without another word, he did. Days passed, then weeks. Lena tried to forget him. She focused on Adam, on her new apartment, on the life she had built with the money Khalid had given her. But at night, when the city was quiet, she still felt him. She hated herself for it. And then one evening, she got a call from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something told her to pick up. Heart pounding, she pressed the phone to her ear. Silence, then, Lena! Her breath caught. She knew that voice. It was Khalid. And just like that, she realized, this wasn't over, not even close. Would you pick up the phone or leave the past behind? Drop a comment below and tell me what you would do. And if you want to know what happens next, hit that subscribe button because trust me, this story isn't finished yet. Lena stared at the phone screen, her heart pounding. Khalid's name glowed against the darkness. For a long time, she had imagined this moment. What she would say if he ever called, if she would yell at him, demand answers, or, God help her, fall back into his orbit like nothing had changed. But things had changed. She had changed. Lena inhaled deeply, her fingers hovering over the screen. And then she let the phone ring and ring until it stopped. No voicemail, no second call, just silence. She exhaled, setting the phone down with trembling hands. This was it, the real ending. Not the kind wrapped in passion and half-truth, but the kind that mattered. Khalid had given her the means to escape her struggles, but she had built this new life herself. She had fought for it, earned it, and she wasn't about to throw it away for a man who had never promised her anything but a temporary escape. So she let him go, for real this time. And when she closed her eyes that night, for the first time in a long time, she felt free. Would you have answered the call? Drop a comment below and let me know. And if you love this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.